Yes, let's move on to
Next story.
the next big story, the next topic that we're going to talk about. Satnam Singh Bhamara, who's made it to the NBA with the 52nd pick by the Dallas Mavericks. He did work out with a few teams before, and during the pre-draft process, during his workout process, everybody was excited, but people were not really sure, right? I mean, when, how, which team will he go? Will he be drafted at all? Will he go through the undrafted route? People were not sure, right? And I mean, I don't need to say that, I sort of predicted it, but
Nonsense.
I sort of had an idea. I mean, Gopal, I don't know if you remember this. We had discussed it, that there could be a possibility that he gets picked in the late 50s, right? And well, he did get picked 52nd. But before that, during the process, I mean, I just wanted to mention the number of teams that he worked out with. He worked out with the Celtics, the Washington Wizards, Sacramento Kings, Portland Trail Blazers, Houston Rockets, and of course the Dallas Mavericks. And having seen that, that a lot of teams are showing interest in, or at least want to test him out, was a hopeful sign for us, for the Indian basketball community. And interestingly, the Dallas Mavericks picked him. And one point which, before we start out this talking about this, one point that I would like to mention is that the Dallas Mavericks have sort of a history with Asian countries. They were the first team to draft a Chinese player into the NBA. With
That's what I was waiting for you to mention.
yeah, with Wang Zizi in 1999, and of course he just played a few seasons with in the NBA. After which Yao Ming came into the picture in 2001 and became a Chinese sensation. But this could really be the beginning of something. So let's open the floor up. I mean, let's start talking about that, guys.
Yeah. So if I have to start talking, I mean, obviously I was completely surprised. I was like shocked in a positive way. I did not expect this to happen because Vishnu. I mean, we have all seen Satnam. I don't know, Jonathan. You must have seen him in some local tournaments because you've been handling the NBA work. But so I first saw him in the Cuttack Nationals in 2013. Okay, there was no doubt about his physicality, just his presence. You can't teach that kind of presence. I'm not talking about his height alone. Just the fact that when he entered that Cuttack arena, Jawaharlal Nehru Indoor Stadium in Cuttack, okay, automatically everybody looks at him. He has that, and he's this imposing giant of a guy. But he was very slow. He was like almost half a play to one play behind all the other 9 guys on the court. So I was not impressed with his speed. But then again, Vishnu and I saw him in last year's senior nationals that happened in Bhilwara. So the Punjab team was terrible. They didn't know what they were doing. They were like completely. I mean, the system was broken down. But Satnam was still moving better and playing better than what he was earlier. But again, there were sort of, since his team did so badly, he got knocked out. Because if you want an NBA NBA player to come and play in India, you expect him to dominate, and that wasn't really happening. So I was actually taken by surprise. I didn't think he'll make it.
Yeah, unfortunately in Bhilwara, he did not impress. He did put up huge numbers. If you recall, Gopal, even in that quarterfinal game, he had 26 points against Haryana. But then it was all a matter of how they used him, and the coaches. He himself, on his own admission, said that he believed that he did not get enough playing time in that tournament. So and he felt like he wasn't being used the right way, which was sort of true, in the sense that even though he improved his skill set from the last national tournament, the fact that he wasn't being effective against players who, forget about making it to an NBA level, they're not even fit to play in probably other professional leagues in Asia. So being not effective against those kind of players, it sort of was a disappointment for at least you and me, Gopal. I mean, to see a guy like Satnam, and he's a big hope for us, and he's not being able to perform at a senior national tournament, or at least dominate. We felt like okay, fine. I mean, maybe we have to wait for another guy to come in and be the NBA hopeful. But then he did put in a lot of work. If you see after that tournament, if you see those workout videos which have been put up by the IMG Academy, he put in a lot of work in the gym, worked on improving his quickness. And one thing for sure, that his confidence seemed to improve. I mean, he knew what
Yes.
he needed to work on. He kept focusing that, I want to be quicker, I want to be stronger, and he's an intense guy. He works hard, that's for sure. I mean, there's no doubt about that. So I think he deserves it. It's complete, credit to the hard work that he's put in, and the fact that he's gone from where he comes from, and the fact that he's gone to the US and adjusted to that environment, and after all that the 4 years that he spent in IMG Academy, for this to come to this to realize this to come to this stage, and being drafted by the NBA is just a big achievement for him, and we really
Before I bring Jonathan in, because I do want his opinion on one particular thing, which I know he has a very strong opinion about, is that what I liked about him is that he's also his English is improved. This might sound like a very minor point, but the fact is, let's not forget Satnam's, it's a win-win. Even if he's terrible on the court, the fact is that his influence extends perhaps more beyond the court. Like the way he addresses the media, the way he sort of pushes the identity of Indian basketball is equally important, if not more, than his personal performance on the court. So I really loved how in that first press interaction with the Indian media, or even with the foreign media, he spoke about the influence of Jagdeep Singh Ben, who is a former Indian player who sort of got injured and sort of fallen off the radar, but he made a point to mention his influence. He spoke about the late coach Sankaran Subramanian, who also passed away, but Satnam remembered that. He also spoke about Harish Sharma, about how he really pushed for Satnam to be picked in the IMG Academy. So, and he also remembered, of course, his IMG coaches, Dan Barto and Kenny Natt as well. So I loved his humility, the way he understands his importance to the Indian basketball setup and what his presence in the NBA can do. So this is where I want to bring Jonathan in. This is a good time to sort of talk about Coach Sankaran Subramanian, because I'm sure you've met him, Jonathan, before, right? Before he passed away.
Yes, I did. Several times actually.
So what can you tell us about him? Like, what was the interaction with him, and how was Coach Sankaran like?
Oh, it was amazing for a basketball fanatic, any basketball fanatic, especially Indian, who, when you understand that it's been a really long time with that, since actually India has never really done anything of note on internationally in basketball. To meet a mind like Sankaran Subramanian was just revelationary. The one thing that really stood out about Dr. Subramanian, may his soul rest in peace, was his unflinching discipline to bench his star players. This, for me, just it changed my perspective on Dr. Subramanian. I obviously always admired him as a great basketball mind. He was old, he was frail, he was a little wobbly. But when it came to him being on the basketball court and him coaching kids, there was a fire in him that was just unmistakable. And the understanding of how a game of basketball is played, that is something I always knew about Dr. Sankaran Subramanian, because he and I spent a lot of evenings together talking basketball. Just two junkies. I picked his brain for everything he knew. But that one incident where he benched his star player, his leading scorer, basically the LeBron James of his team, or rather in this case a more accurate comparison would be the Stephen Curry of his team, for 2 quarters. For me, that just showed so much of his character, that for him the game of basketball was more important than any player by themselves, which was, like I said, and I keep repeating this, what was a revelation to me, because in India, unfortunately, coaches become fans of their players, and doesn't matter whether their best player is a diva, they will continue to build them because, well, that's my best player, he's going to score my most points, and that didn't matter to Dr. Subramanian.
Yeah. So Satnam obviously remembered him, and that was great of him to sort of, that shows his humility as well. That's something that even Vishnu spoke about earlier. When all these, whenever he went to all these tryouts, all of them spoke about his work ethic and his humility, and the fact that he's really down to earth. But Vishnu, what are his chances? Because obviously there's this whole wrong impression created in the Indian media. Obviously Indian media, well, we all have very strong opinions about them, that they're sort of matlabi to an extent, that they remember basketball only when it suits them. But the fact is, it's not fair to create this sort of mega hype around Satnam, and then because then the moment the league starts, he's obviously not going to play in the actual NBA. He's going to be in the D League or in the Summer League. So then they're going to say it's a big failure. Satnam has disappointed Indian basketball itself. So Vishnu, what is Satnam's journey going forward?
Well, I think the going forward, like right now, what the next round will be is he will probably play on the Summer League with the Dallas Mavericks, and after that he'll be sent off to the Texas Legends team, their D League team, to develop. And this is something which is if people who are not so familiar with basketball may not know that this is a very natural process. If a player, they see some potential in some player and they draft him, and he's still a work in progress. So then the ideal, the logical next step will be to send him to the D League team, and that's the point of the D League, to develop the player. So it all depends on how the D League stint goes for him, whether he improves as a player. Because there have been a lot of second round picks in the NBA who have turned out to be really sort of like gems, hidden gems, right? So a good example would probably be Manu Ginobili. He was picked. He was the 57th pick in 1999, and the Spurs sort of kept him in cold storage in Europe, and then he became the EuroLeague Finals MVP, and he really developed 2-3 years in Europe, and then they brought him into the NBA. So a similar sort of transition for Satnam would be to develop with the opportunity that's given to him in the D League, and you never know, after you go from there, and depends on how he improves, there definitely will be a chance for him in the years to come. But for people to say that if he's sent to the D League and that is a failure, he hasn't really performed in the NBA, they obviously are not familiar with the process. Right, and picking him so late, 52nd. Obviously, there were talks. If the Dallas news is to be believed, there were talks that the other picks that they had in mind were already taken by other teams, and they didn't see anybody else who would probably be suitable for them. So they thought they'll take a chance and with Satnam Singh, because they were looking for a big guy, like Mark Cuban said, and. Also, there were also other talks about why they chose him, and the fact that his agents are also agents of DeAndre Jordan, and it's sort of a back scratching sort of tactic, and they were looking to recruit DeAndre Jordan in a big way. So that way, either way, whatever the case may be, he did get picked, and the next step is for him to be with the D League. I think Donnie Nelson, the owner of the Texas Legends team, has confirmed that he will start his career in the D League Texas Legends. So it's going to be how Satnam takes it from now on. And I think that given his nature and given the fact that he's a hardworking player, he will put in the time. And if he puts his head down, stays humble, puts in the hard work and effort, there will be a chance when you'll see him on an NBA court someday.
Here are my thoughts on the whole Maverick signing Satnam, right? I've heard the same stories that you guys have heard, especially the ones with, there was nobody else on the board, and that's why they took Satnam, and they were looking for a big guy. And the more interesting story for me that obviously is floating around, that something Vishnu mentioned, is that they did this to get closer to DeAndre Jordan's agent. That just seems like absolute rubbish to me. First of all, why would Mark Cuban, who's a team owner, want to keep an agent happy by signing a player of his? That just makes no sense to me. Mark Cuban's a man well worth over $5-6 billion. There are millions of other ways he can keep an agent happy, right? Point number one. Point number two, when that article came out, obviously it went viral online. Not many people read the article. The same agent is also the agent of Chandler Parsons, who Mark Cuban historically signed at a club, right? So it's not like, and the relationship is not with the agent. The relationship is with the man who owns the company that is the agency of Satnam, which is Relativity Sports. and a gentleman by the name of Dan Fegan. Dan Fegan company also manages Chandler Parsons. So any of this rubbish that people are putting out there saying that Mark Cuban had to pacify and keep an agent or a sports company happy to sign DeAndre Jordan is absolute rubbish. Put the money on the table. If Mark Cuban and the Mavericks wanted to pursue DeAndre Jordan, they'd make an offer to him, he couldn't refuse, and he will still jump. It doesn't really matter what relationship is. Money talks, not the relationship, essentially, in this case, right?
So Jonathan, so just to be objective, you are a FIBA agent yourself. So guys, for those of you who don't know who Jonathan Rego is, he's India's first FIBA agent. So he does know this whole murky waters of agency and trades and all that, so he's familiar with it. So Jonathan, if objectively speaking, then do you think, would you have picked Satnam this year? What were your expectations from Satnam? Would you have picked him in the league, or do you think he's just a marketing fix just to push the NBA brand in India?
So point number one, my prediction then was I wouldn't have picked him. I've seen some of Satnam's workouts. He's too slow for the NBA game, and a game that is slowly evolving into small ball and the speed at which it's being played. I think Satnam would have had a nightmare of a time trying to catch up with NBA teams, right? I would have ideally, my prediction on the Upistani blog, as a matter of fact, a couple of weeks before the NBA draft, was that he would go undrafted, then a team would sign him, put him in the D-League, and then obviously test him out in the NBA, right? Because he's definitely a bigger draw in the Indian market than Simbula, which then leads me to your second question and my second point. Of course, there is a marketing. What's the word?
Angle,
not angle. There is a vested interest here, right? Let's just call it what it is. That not to take away from the effort and work that Satnam has put in, right? Let's not let whoever is listening to this not get me wrong here. Satnam 7 years ago was a farmer in a village that had 800 people. He had to stitch 2 pairs of shoes so that he could fit his size 22 feet into it. To go from there to declaring for the draft and being selected by an NBA team for whatsoever reason, let's put it this way, if Satnam doesn't put in that work for 5 years, is he even considered for the NBA draft? No, right? He could have just as easily gone to the US, lots of pretty women there, lots of freedom for him there, lots of opportunity for him, and he was in Florida for crying out loud. Lots of opportunity for things to go wrong. He's a big guy, right? There was every reason for this to fail, but it did not. So let us give Satnam due credit for keeping his head down, being focused, and making it to the NBA. But that being said, you cannot deny there is a marketing angle here. Mark Cuban is a businessman at the end of the day, and a new age businessman for that matter. He's also the guy like Vishnu mentioned. This is also the guy who signed the first Chinese player in the NBA. And Satnam and Bong Zizi was signed at a time when social media was not a thing. There was no way to kind of help the news of the first Chinese player explode the way the first Indian player has exploded. I mean, this is all over the news right now. It's going viral. Satnam Singh was trending worldwide on Twitter. So there's obviously a huge kind of storm that has been created by the signing of Satnam. And if you don't need to look any further than Mark Cuban's own words, we now have 1 billion more Mavs fans, quote unquote, right? So if you think that Mark Cuban was signing Satnam Singh was only a basketball decision, then you're naive in the ways of the world. There was definitely also, not only, but also a marketing angle to it. Satnam, there's a huge potential for Satnam in India and for the Mavs in India. It's crazy. And Mavs are also, it's not like Mavs are a random team in the NBA. They are former NBA champions. They still have one of the greatest basketball players in Dirk Nowitzki who play for them still. And they have a very, very savvy business owner in Mark Cuban. So there is also a marketing angle. As much as there was Satnam's effort to being selected, declaring for the NBA draft and being selected with the Mavericks.
Yeah, one is that, see, obviously Satnam Singh has again put Indian basketball in the public eye, on the map. I still remember last year when India beat China. That was sort of the first explosion, so to speak. I don't remember any other time in Indian basketball history, maybe Jonathan will know better, where Indian basketball or basketball in India started, came to the public eye. Obviously, within the sort of small and passionate basketball community where you knew what was happening, but there was a word of mouth thing happening. But this is the first time where, it's great that it's happening now more frequently. It happened incidentally just, I think, exactly a year ago when India beat China, and now again. So let's hope that this sort of thing of basketball and Indian basketball coming in the news happens more frequently. Because one thing also that I liked was this one particular article in the Hindustan Times. Because for me, it's about not just Satnam himself, but how can Indian basketball become better? Because one Satnam thing is not going to be enough. The fact is, we have these massive issues domestically. Obviously, to those familiar with Indian basketball will know about the factional fight, where these two sort of governing bodies are claiming to be the official sort of administrators of the sport in India. So basketball in India is in a massive mess. So I don't know how much obviously Satnam Singh can talk about all these issues, but the fact remains that it's important that the light continues to be shown or shined towards Indian basketball so that things sort of get settled also. So we have to see what happens with that.
And also, just to add to your point about, this could be a renaissance for Indian basketball.
Yeah.
And the fact that the first Indian player has been drafted by the NBA, this is the time when the administration in India should really step up and lay a roadmap for the foundation. I mean, for the future, basically to train kids better, get better infrastructure, and get more players to the NBA. And during the draft process also, during the pre-draft process, people compared him a lot to a Yao Ming of India. Now, I think a more apt comparison would be to compare him to a Wang Zizi, because Wang Zizi played only a few seasons in the NBA. He did get drafted in 1999. He was the 36th pick, and he made his NBA debut only in 2001. Right, and he played with a few teams, bounced around, and now he's playing again in China. Right, but that was sort of the foundation when China basketball really took off. And although the CBA was formed much earlier and there was a league which was happening, China basketball really, they focused on the infrastructure of the game and developing players. And then, of course, in 2001, Yao Ming came into the picture, and he was the first pick. And that really, it sort of escalated tremendously. So then if you look at Satnam Singh, you can compare him to a Wang Zizi, saying that this is the first step where an Indian player has been drafted in the NBA for the first time. And then the real next step would be when that other transcendent sort of player comes into the picture and gets drafted in a higher level, and really, he's recruited and he's looked at right from a young age. And that would be the next step when, India basketball gets really popular.
Just to add a point here, and I do think we already have two likely such players who are definitely better than Satnam Singh is today. I think you guys know who I'm talking about, Amritpal and Amjot Singh. So the guys who are tuning in, it's an equally significant development that happened before Satnam got drafted in the NBA, is the fact that Amritpal and Amjot Singh, two of India's fulcrum of the Indian senior national team, both like 22, 23 years old, are now in Japan and trying to get into the pro league in Japan. They're already in the summer league. They're part of the Hyoko Impulse team. So I think, and Amjot Singh, Jonathan, because Jonathan Rego has been following the quality of Indian basketball. I think Amjot Singh in particular is an elite talent, and he has that ability to adapt and sort of evolve his game quickly. So I do think that Amjot and Amritpal could well, I don't know if I'm pushing it here, but could well make it to the NBA, not now, because obviously they've taken a much more longer and tougher route, but they can make it perhaps to the league as seasoned players when they are 27, 28.
Yeah, and also it's such an unpredictable league, right? Because you have players like, for example, Pablo Prigioni, who came into the NBA. He's an Argentinian guy, and he most recently played for the Houston Rockets. But he came into the NBA when he was 35. So anything is possible, is what I'm saying. And it's a great point you mentioned about Amjot Singh and Amritpal. if they can develop with their exposure in the Japanese league and then make it to a higher level league in Asia probably, and then get recognized, you never know. You never know what can happen.
Well, I definitely agree with Amjot's the Amjot point. Amjot's, I think, incredibly talented. I think he definitely has it in him to make it to the NBA if he continues to grow. I mean, if he grows at the right pace right now, right? My concern, I mean, with Amrit Man, he's still a little raw and he hasn't had the kind of exposure that Satnam was privileged to have. So, unless there is a greater focus on development for Amrit Man, I think he brings a very limited set of skills to the table for now. So, at this point of time, if you ask me, I don't think Amrit Man really makes it. Maybe a D-League contract at best. And I hope to be wrong, right? As a matter of fact, like I told you, my prediction about Satnam was that he would go undrafted. And I was hoping to be wrong. That's what I clearly said. I hope that I'm proved wrong. So I genuinely hope that I'm wrong about Amrit Man as well. But Amjot definitely seems like a better prospect. If over the next 3 years, 27, 28, he puts in the kind of effort that and gets the access to training that he should be getting, I think he definitely makes the NBA somewhere down the line. My only thing about, I'm not too sure if you can compare them to an Andre Prigioni, right? Because Prigioni Prigioni is a guard. And we all know that over a period of time, because of their bodies and the way they play and the kind of beating they take into the paint, big men their bodies are not historically meant to last. Tim Duncan's an aberration, okay, but historically, whether it's a Shaq or whether it's Jabbar again was another aberration, but Jabbar was into yoga and a whole bunch of other things. But historically, big men's bodies have not really lasted them. Dominique Wilkins is an example for that matter. So, to expect them to kind of make the break at about 34, 35, anywhere in their 30s. If they're 30 and they've not made it to the NBA, I think the likelihood of them making it to the NBA at all is very, very, very slim.
Yeah, let's not get into that.
An NBA team would rather, pick a project who is 18, 19 or 20 or 21 and invest in them long term than picking up a 30-year-old guy who's going to be contributing off the bench. But if Amjot, for example, or even Amrit Man for that matter, if they get the right training over the next 3 to 4 years, I agree, there's a good chance that they make the D-League/NBA.
That's right. We were looking more of an age of 27, 28, and the fact that, there are all kinds of stories which are possible, so you never know. But the fact that, let's move back to Satnam Singh, and the fact that, I was talking about his skill set, the fact that he has a good outside touch is something that can go a long way to him making it to a regular spot on an NBA team. So the fact that at 7'2", he can shoot from the outside, he has a good range, and the fact that the game today has become a lot about range. Like we mentioned earlier, even Zach Randolph had to develop a mid-range jump shot, a 15 to 18 jump shot, to stay relevant in today's NBA. Now, Satnam Singh can definitely shoot the ball. The only thing that is severely lacking is his quickness, his footwork. From the upper body, he has all the strength, but his legs, his feet, his footwork and his quickness really needs to be worked on. So
cautious optimism, I think, is what is the message that we are trying to send out to all Indian basketball and sports fans generally. That you should be excited, but not too much.
A person who I think he can. Again, this is, I think it's obviously optimism, but there's a better person who you can compare. I don't know whether you guys remember this guy. He used to play for the Blazers, Arvidas Sabonis. Oh, yeah. Do you remember this guy?
Yeah, for sure. But
So Sabonis was the kind of guy. Sabonis is the kind of guy I think Satnam. That's his ceiling, in my opinion. And to kind of address your point of his outside touch, a lot of people think Satnam can shoot because of a video of his workout where he's making threes. A couple of observations there. Yes, he's making threes, but obviously you don't see the misses. The video is edited to only show that he's making shots. Point number two, he is making I don't know whether you notice, he's got the touch, yes, he's got the form, yes, but if you notice, he takes a really long time to actually release the ball. Like his shot setup is really long. So a couple of things. Yes, he's got the touch. Yes, he's got so that is actually the hardest thing to teach: the touch and the range, right? If he can quicken that pace a little, where he go, like, because he really, by the time he kind of sets himself up for the shot, he takes about a second and a half to actually release the ball from the start. So if he can reduce that time taken to actually release the shot, that becomes a huge advantage. And he needs to learn how to shoot from the top rather than having to recoil, go to the bottom, shoot from his knees. Because he's a big guy, he needs to figure out a way how to make that shot a little quicker. His skill, that is obviously the skill that should be making us more confident, more optimistic, is his touch around the basket. He's got a very, very reliable hook shot, something that is extremely difficult to teach. And obviously at his height at 7'2", he's nailed the hook shot. I think that's the big. So he already has a back to the basket here. He needs to improve his lateral quickness, and like I said, I agree with Vishnu. He's got a shooting touch which can become advantageous only if he could quicken or speed up his release.
Yeah, I mean, talking about the back to the basket game, as far as I've seen, and even in the senior national championship, it's really not good. I mean, if you look at it in the other videos, even the IMG Academy videos, the shots that he was getting was not individual post-ups. So that is something that he really needs to work on, and that is probably his weakness right now. He's definitely a big guy. A big guy and a big body in the paint is always useful for any NBA team. But the quickness to work on the NBA pick and roll, to do the pick and pop, these are the kinds of ways that he will be used in the NBA, and this is something that those are the areas he needs to focus on.
And he's not a bad passer as well. I mean, he has that sense of moving the ball around. So that's definitely, and he can kick the ball out. So these are these little things that definitely are in his favor.
And also, quick mention that he, after the rules changed in 2005, with the high schoolers becoming ineligible for the draft, he's the first player that was selected without playing in college, overseas in a foreign professional league or in the NBA D League. So that's another historical first for Satnam.
This is an argument that is made that India should not feel happy at all about Satnam because we've done nothing for him. So just to sort of clarify that, because that particular article really, I think, annoyed all of us, is the fact is, to sort of reiterate that Harish Sharma, the late Harish Sharma, who was the CEO of the Basketball Federation of India, at least realized that, what, the system in India isn't good, and he made it a point to ensure that the deal went through between IMG Reliance and the Basketball Federation of India to identify and send these 8 players who joined IMG Academy, 4 boys, 4 girls. Now, again, obviously the other 3 sort of players aren't that, didn't make it. Because one of them, I think, is Sanjeev Kumar, who is a quality point guard but has frequent back trouble. But the fact is that Satnam has, the fact that Satnam made it was because he trained in this elite IMG Academy facility. So, and even now, the fact that we're talking about Amritpal and Amjot as perhaps will make it to the NBA is because they are going to Japan and getting out of the country. So the solution, I think the long-term solution still has to be that how can we have players who have played in the Indian system, who have developed completely in the Indian system to the age of 22, 24, and then directly make the leap. I think that is the main focus or next step for the Indian basketball community in terms of developing the sport in India.
Yeah, definitely. I wasn't too incensed at that article, to be honest. I'm just glad. While the article was critical, and I think this was mainly the coverage by Hindustan Times, the article was critical, yes, definitely, and probably in some cases unfairly so, but it was important for them to bring out the plight of the country, the plight of what is considered the best basketball academy in the country, the Ludhiana Basketball Academy.
No, Jonathan, actually, I'm not talking about the Hindustan Times article, I'm talking about another first post article which just used or sort of lazy journalism in a sense, where they just took out stuff from that. Hindustan Times article was great. That's the kind of coverage that we need, that people going to such places, doing reportage and finding out what the real scene is on the ground. So Hindustan Times article, awesome job. We want more of that. where they're actually going and finding out, like age fraud. Jonathan, we have spoken about this also. The age fraud seen in the Indian basketball sort of setup and all these national competitions where, overage players play, like 15, 16-year-olds play at the under 13 level. And then the under 16, under 18 level, they don't check the birth certificates again. They sort of go back and just check whether they have played at what time they played the under 13 level. So if you can cheat the system at the first age group level, then you can continue cheating the system throughout. And then the same older players take advantage, they develop, they have international exposure. So the same overage players are going to continue at playing in the senior Indian team. So I mean, these are sort of one of the many issues, apart from obviously the fact that our coaching is still stuck largely in the 1970s, the Soviet model where we are sort of, where we're trying to follow a textbook very strictly. I mean, all of these things have to change definitely.
So I mean, to say that India had nothing to do with it is kind of tarnishing Dr. Subramanian's legacy, right? So let's face it that if Satnam doesn't get discovered or doesn't get accepted into the Ludhiana Basketball Academy by Dr. Subramanian, we wouldn't have seen a Satnam Singh. And I'd like to remind first post or whoever it is that put out that article that Dr. Subramanian is Indian. Ludhiana Basketball is, as far as I last checked, is still in Ludhiana, which is a city in Punjab, which is a state in India. So to say that India had nothing to do with it is obviously pushing it. We did, yes, the fact that the opportunity created for him to get into the NBA was obviously created in an international academy, accepted. But that's the case with a lot of athletes, right?
True.
If Sharapova, for example, doesn't get the exposure that she got in IMG Academy, do you think she becomes Sharapova? No. The IMG Academy has to be given due credit here, for sure. But let's also, understand that the parents of these children and the countries where they came from, which, are all. And it's not more the countries, but at least those first one or two coaches who took them on because with absolutely nothing in return, right? Ideally speaking, if obviously we don't live in a visual world, but someone should be giving some sort of money or some sort of the money he's got to Dr. Subramanian as well, or his family as well, because if it was not for Dr. Subramanian, let's face it, we wouldn't have seen a Satnam Singh. Obviously that's pushing and asking to give them money, but you get where I'm coming from. That he did give him the amount of respect. So an Indian in an Indian basketball academy in India found Satnam Singh, and then an Indian got an American company, that is Harish Sharma, got IMG to consider taking Satnam to IMG. So India may not have anything to do with the development, but India had everything to do with finding this kid. So we are just as responsible for him making it to the NBA as IMG is or America is.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that also, because the fact that a lot of players do take this route. You see a lot of African players who join high schools in the US to develop their basketball game, to look at a future playing professionally in the US. A lot of Australian players go and choose the St. Mary's College is the go-to place right now for Australians. Paddy Mills went there, Matthew Dellavedova went there. So a lot of these guys go where the best facilities are, and the best facilities are in the US.
Yeah,
so
another example would be Serge Ibaka. Serge Ibaka picked up the ball at 15, he moved to the US at 19, and then 6 years down the line, he is an NBA player. Did Congo have nothing to do? Obviously, for 4 years he played in Congo. Let's not forget that. And then he moved to the US. So it's a normal, and not just in basketball, in any sport, tennis, football, cricket for that matter, as a matter of fact as well. Cricket may not work from the perspective of an Indian kid moving internationally, but most kids, for example, will go to a cricket hotbed to get selected. So instead of living in a village in Maharashtra, for example, they will come to a bigger city like Bombay where they have better access to better facility. So that's how it works. You obviously move to a better situation, but to say that the place that you've come from had absolutely nothing to do with where you are today makes no sense. When Satnam himself is admitting that if it were not for Harish Sharma or if it were not for Dr. Shankar Subramanian, he wouldn't be where he is today.
So in conclusion, Gopal, you want to round it off?
So that's it. I mean, it's great to have Jonathan Rego with us. Jonathan, thank you for joining us.
Anytime, man. Anytime.
Yeah. So let's see. I mean, this is definitely a real dawn for Indian basketball. That much we can say, because we've had false maybe dawns in the past where you had guys like Robinson, who was like a flash in the pan, but now when India beat China last year and now Satnam make it to the NBA and you have 2 Indian players going to Japan. So now I think it's fair, and even the celebrity attention which we have to sort of bring out here. Amitabh Bachchan and all these journalists, I mean, Rajdeep Sardesai, all these guys, they were talking about it like it made the news again. Abhishek Bachchan has been a big vocal fan. So now I think basketball is acquiring, or not acquiring, it's sort of pushing for its space in the Indian sports sector. So let's hope it remains there and just it's not like disappears again, which is why we're calling it the real dawn. But I think it's the start of something epic, and I hope that other Indian players can learn from the Satnam Singh experience and sort of not give excuses. We've heard, even Jonathan Rego must have heard all the excuses that we are feeling homesick, the food is different, the culture is different, the language is different. But if a villager from Punjab has the courage to leave everything behind and start a new life and reach the pinnacle of a professional sport, I mean, what's your excuse? So let's all learn from Satnam. He's a role model, and let's all hope for a new dawn for Indian basketball.
Definitely, man.
Yeah, for sure. And just as a parting note, I would like to add that this is the first step, like you said, Gopal. This is the first step. It would be more appropriate to compare a Satnam to like how Wang Zizi is to China, Satnam Singh is to India. This is the step when people really need to realize that there is potential in Indian basketball, and people need to really invest in that. The major players need to put focus on Indian basketball, develop talent at a grassroots level, and then the sky is the limit. So good times to come.
Good times to come, man.
Right.
Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you so much, Jonathan. So this sort of concludes our 6th NBA on Ekalavyas podcast. We hope to see you next time with more talks of the NBA.
Anytime.
So this is Vishnu Ravi Shankar, Gopal, and Jonathan Rego signing off.